Hello and welcome to Moderate Fantasy Violence, a podcast about pop culture and the world around it. I'm Alistair.
And I'm Nick.
And in today's animated fantasy superhero special, we will be singing and fighting demons with our friends in K-pop Demon Hunters. And then we will be attempting to retrieve stolen advanced technology from our homeland in Eyes of Wakanda. But before all of that, Nick, what have you been up to since we last spoke?
Well, we have started another big past TV show viewing project because, I don't know, there didn't seem to be anything new on. And this is also an attempt, I think, to maybe finally watch all the things we want to see on Amazon Prime because, to be honest, there's not that much stuff on there and maybe we can afford to cancel it. So, with that in mind, we have finally decided to watch The Marvellous Mrs Maisel, one of Amazon Prime's few relatively successful TV shows that started a few years ago in the streaming heyday of the mid to late 2010s, starring Rachel Brosnahan as a woman back in the 50s who decides to give stand-up comedy a go, despite that not being something that's really done much by women in that time. And while she's also having to deal with her marriage falling apart, her moving back is with her parents as a result of that, and all the fun that entails. And yeah, it's a good show, as everyone says. It's from Amy Sherman Palladino, is the showrunner. She's also probably best known still as the creator of Gilmore Girls, another classic TV show I have not seen. And based on this, I may well get around to watching it, to be honest, because yeah, I really enjoyed this. It's just got a very sort of light tone of dialogue. I think one of the big things Sherman Palladino is known for is her dialogue. In a similar way to Aaron Sorkin, she's just got a very nice sort of light, musical, character-filled way of just having characters bounce off each other in this fun way that just carries you through the scene in a way that's just pleasant to listen to and just has this sort of really tangible push and pull between them. And yeah, it's just nice, especially Rachel Brosnahan as the main character, Midge Maisel, and Tony Shalhoub as her dad. That's a particularly good combination. There's a lot of very good scenes with those two. But yeah, the show as a whole is just extremely fun. It's light, it's uplifting in a sort of, inspirational, she's making a go of it way, in a sort of Hollywood story, sports story way. But also, it's got a little bit of realism to it, but not too much.
Yeah, sounds good. This show has certainly been well received. My partner really likes it. One of the shows that she consumes. Yeah, it's definitely one of the things on Amazon that's got more attention, considering most of the shows, including some of the ones we've reviewed in this podcast, don't seem to get a lot of attention outside of The Boys. How many seasons have they done at this point?
They've done 5 and it's had its ending, so it's all there. We're just going to smash on through it.
And how far through are you?
We have finished the first season.
Okay, so you've got quite a way to go. There is a definite ending and you are moving through the content.
Yeah. It's got going. It's quite a sort of slow pace. We haven't really got to anywhere. And, she's not reached stardom at this stage. She's very much just taking her tentative first steps. I think the appeal of this show is, as I say, the fun dialogue and character interplay rather than the blistering pace. So yeah, I can see it taking 5 seasons to get anywhere particularly far down her career line. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it so far. It's just pleasant to watch. It's just nice. Not so nice that it's completely drama-free, but it does just make you smile.
They certainly got a good cast. They definitely like Tony Shalhoub. He's great in lots of things. One of those sort of like character actors who turns up and always does like an interesting, unusual performance, usually playing slightly eccentric or unusual characters.
He's very much playing, an older eccentric academic here whose cosy life is somewhat uprooted when his daughter does bohemian things like stand-up comedy and divorce.
Yeah, that sounds like a character Tony Shalhoub would play very well. It's like ideal casting, really.
Yeah, no, he's great. He's kind of stealing it, to be honest, considering the show is mostly about female empowerment. The dad is stealing his scenes quite aggressively.
I guess that is sometimes the thing that happens when you have that, one minor character, who is not the sort of one who has to carry the weight of being like a complex, likable character. To be the main character, someone who comes in and does, funny and endearing bits can be one of the characters that steals people's attention.
Oh, he does steal the scenes he's in, but to be fair, I don't want to, take away from Rachel Brosnahan especially, considering, the show is very much about, Midge Maisel and how amazingly compelling and what a natural star she is. You've got to cast that well, and she does actually have that charisma. When she gets on the stage and just comes alive and starts performing, it is absolutely great, so can't argue with it. She was very good as Lois Lane, and I can see, why they've decided to move her up to movies. Yeah, she's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that a lot of people are very excited about her casting in Superman when that happened. I guess a lot of Mrs. Maisel fans out there. But is the stand-up funny? Because it just reminds me of, I think we talked about this before, Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, when the stand-up for some reason wasn't funny. I guess that's because Aaron Sorkin's Bless His Cotton Socks is not a stand-up comedy writer, although he is a funny man.
Yeah, well, a weird example of a guy who is actually kind of known for doing funny writing, just failing to be funny in that specific situation. Now, this is working, I think. It's a lot more anecdotal rather than joke-based stand-up comedy. It is mostly just based on her rants about her life and her funny turns of phrase during it, which I think is better suited to a sort of dialogue writer. But yeah, it works well. It's good fun. Again, that and her massive radiant charisma. And it's sort of nicely built through the show of how she's just the sort of person who shines in every situation and has, if anything, been sort of held back by having to be, a conventional wife rather than going off and becoming a star on her own. It's interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing how they get 5 seasons out of it.
Yeah, sounds good, yeah. And I know a lot of people really rate Gilmore Girls as a show. It's probably, it's a seminal show that I've not seen, considering how many people I know really, really like it. Like it to the point when they have lots of favourite episodes they dive back into or do repeated rewatches. I'm pretty sure my partner rewatched the entire thing when it first appeared on Netflix.
Yeah, same. As I say, my partner is an enormous fan. It has been on the list of things we would watch together, and since we have now done The West Wing together, which I guess was my thing, we probably do need to do Gilmore Girls next. And you know what? Yeah, after seeing this, I'm kind of up for more, to be honest. You may well be hearing about me watching Gilmore Girls at some point in the future, once we've finished this and done the final season of The Boys and then cancelled Amazon.
Yeah, so that's also all on Amazon Prime then?
Gilmore Girls is currently on Netflix, I think. I think Netflix made some sort of sequel show to it, which I think possibly was received quite badly, but there's still the previous 7 seasons to watch.
Yeah, I suppose that's a lot of content. To be fair, there are a lot of shows when they pick it up years later, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, such as Arrested Development. I mean, I'm kind of watching my way through The King of the Hill that they picked up again after a long hiatus, but we'll keep my powder dry on that one. You have to wait for a future podcast episode.
Oh, interesting. I've heard takes on that, but I will wait for yours. But yeah, no, this is good. I think I'm looking forward to watching the rest of this. I imagine I'll be back to inform the pod once I've got through a few more seasons.
So it is a show that lives up to its critical reputation?
Yeah.
It has been well received.
Yeah, no, it's really great. I mean, as I say, I'll be interested to see how it ebbs and flows over its 5 seasons, but I can see why it made a big splash when it first launched. Certainly, this first season was excellent. Okay, so yeah, that's what I've been doing. Alistair, how about you?
As I alluded to, this is not the moment when I give you my opinion on King of the Hill, new season, even though it has been out for a bit and I am watching my way through it, but with my schedule of content to consume, I haven't finished it yet. So I won't give you my full opinion until I finish watching it. But what I have watched that I'm here to discuss is a film called Tornado, which is not to be confused with Twister or its recent sequel. This is a film that came out earlier this year, which billed itself as a Scottish samurai film, which is an unusual and interesting concept, certainly attention-grabbing. The plot follows basically a gang of Scottish outlaws led by Tim Roth as their leader and Jack Loudon as his son and sort of second in command, as they attempt to hunt down a Japanese woman who's on the run in Scotland after stealing gold from them. There's murder, there's violence, and then there's sort of revenge plot as well. And it does actually do a pretty good job of conforming to the genre expectations and iconography of a samurai film, despite the fact it's set in Scotland in the 18th century rather than in Japan. So there are Japanese cast members, including obviously the main character. And it's a really interesting film. It's got a lot of beautiful shots of Scottish scenery. It's quite a tense but quiet film. It's one of those films where not a lot is said. There's a lot of intense people, chasing after each other, scurrying around, intense angry glances, not a huge amount of dialogue, but it does really build the tension. And as it progresses, especially towards the quite violent finale, it does really layer the tension up and is very effective.
Okay, so this isn't played for laughs then?
No, this is deadly serious. This is definitely done as it was grim. It was a grim time. There were thugs, they menaced people, and then eventually they menaced the wrong Japanese woman who takes revenge. It's grim, it's quiet, it's tense, it's dark, there's lots of murder.
Yeah, no, that sounds like what you're after in your samurai cinema. Yeah,
so it's an interesting film. There's quite a lot of advertising for it in London when it came out. I don't think it made much of an impression outside that. It was obviously billed very much as something like, it had some crazy tagline such as the Scottish samurai film that you have to see, or something like that, as opposed to all the other Scottish samurai films. I guess it's got that one interesting elevator pitch that works really well. I mean, the cast is great. That's the other thing I'd say about it. Tim Roth does a really, really good villain We've seen him do villains in Marvel films, but he has a really broad range of skills and he's a great actor. I really liked him in Bergman Island, which I watched a couple of years ago. That was much more of a quiet drama. Obviously, Jack Lowden, also very, very good as his sort of scheming son. It's got Roy McCann in it as well, who most people know as the Hound from Game of Thrones. Good to see him getting more work. Yeah, I guess slightly unoriginally cast as a large thug. And also the main Japanese woman who's got a one-word name, which I'm going to attempt to pronounce. I think it's Koki. She's really, really good as the main character, and obviously the whole film is built around her performance and and her quest for revenge. She's something of a newcomer, doesn't seem to have done an enormous amount of films, and I think this is her first film that's partly in the English language. Yeah, and she's very, very good. Yeah, it's interesting decisions, but it's got a lot of familiar faces in it from sort of historical and period dramas and films that you've seen recently.
Okay, because you said it had been advertised a lot, and I think I missed this entirely. So this wasn't a small indie film then. This was a full wide release, but just didn't seem to make that much of a splash.
Yeah, I really don't know how widely released it was. I mean, it may not have been in all your local Odeons or Views and things like that. It was certainly widely available in independent cinemas across London and had a substantial tube advertising campaign. I don't know if maybe they were going for something similar to like Kneecap, which was advertised very, very heavily in London and played a lot in independent cinemas. That got people along and got people talking and then spread the news. I mean, Kneecap is a very attention-grabbing, provocative film, and it had the actual Kneecap artist making waves in the press at the same time to draw more attention to it. I mean, compared to a lot of your Hollywood blockbusters or things like that, this is probably, definitely a lower profile film. And I guess it's probably not even one of the big British films of this year. I'm trying to think what it is. Probably the new Bridget Jones, I guess. That was this year, wasn't it? Something like that. That's probably the highest profile British film of the year. But, it's more than just a festival film that's garnered attention purely through word of mouth or something like that. Like I say, it's got well-known people in it. Tim Roth obviously is a well-known actor with a lot of, history of good performances. Jack Lowden, obviously, we all like Slow Horses. And he's done quite a lot of other stuff. Again, this is him doing his natural Scottish accent. And he's very good in this film. Again, as a big fan of Slow Horses, good to see him branching out. I also really like that film about Siegfried Sassoon that he was in with Peter Capaldi a few years ago. That was very powerful. So Jack Lowden really does have a great CV as an independent art house film actor. And I think people are concerned that he's going to go full mainstream, I guess, after Slow Horses and when there were Bond rumours floating around. But it seems like, at least for now, he's sticking to his indie guns as well as doing popular stuff like TV shows on Apple.
I was going to say, you've been waiting for him to get cast as Bond for what feels like years at this point.
I think we've been waiting for anyone to get cast as Bond for years at this point. It's been a long, slow period, considering especially it was a long gap between last Bond films. As someone pointed out, the gap between the last two Bond films was great, and the gap between Die Another Day and Casino Royale when they rebooted the whole franchise and changed Bond. And considering how obvious it was that Daniel Craig wasn't continuing after No Time to Die, they've had a long time to get this new Bond sorted. I suppose this whole sale to Amazon must have taken up a lot of time. I don't know. We are kind of waiting for a new Bond, although apparently one is being made. So any day now we'll find out who the next James Bond is. Maybe. Who knows? Or maybe it won't happen for ages.
Well, I imagine after years of it not happening, they'll probably now announce it in the time between us recording and releasing this to make us look stupid.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
Hopefully we've successfully tempted fate into triggering the announcement.
Yeah. But if you want to watch a Scottish samurai film, and honestly, why wouldn't you? Then I can recommend this as definitely the best Scottish samurai film that I've ever seen. It is just a great tense film. Yeah, it really builds mood well. It's full of beautiful shots of wild rural Scotland. It's got good performances in it. Can't really fault it as a film. Probably won't trouble the top 5 of the year. It is eligible, I guess, as it did come out in cinema this year. Even though I just seen this, it's just dropped on streaming. Yeah, so probably won't trouble the top 5, but certainly something that I can recommend.
Okay, and next up, it's time to talk about one of the animated movie sensations of the summer. It's K-pop Demon Hunters, a movie about a K-pop band called Huntrix, who are also, as well as being chart-dominating pop stars, are secretly demon hunters who keep the dark forces at bay. But unfortunately, the demons are massing against them, and they have finally found a way to take them down for good. They've sent a group of demons to Earth in the form of a boy band called the Saja Boys, who are going to destroy the Huntrix in the charts, take away the source of their powers, and overrun the planet. So yeah, that'd be a bummer, but surely Huntrix can stop them. This has been, as I say, a bit of a popular viral hit, including in the charts. I think a song from this has been number 1 in the UK in the recent past. So yeah, it's definitely had an impact. And so we have decided to cover it on this podcast. Alistair, you've seen this film. What did you think of it?
So, similar to the aforementioned Scottish samurai film, this film has an attention-grabbing premise in the title. Yep, K-pop stars who hunt demons. And yeah, it does what it says on the tin. That is exactly what it's about. And it's good fun. Yeah, it's a great premise. They lean into it hard. It's funny, it's got some good action sequences, it's got some zany animation, it's kind of sweet and it's got like heart in all the right places. You know, it's got a sort of positive message about accepting yourself and being accepted by others. Yeah, this is generally the sort of film you can't fault in that, yeah, it's funny when it needs to be funny, it's dramatic when it needs to be dramatic, it's kind of sweet and moving when it needs to be sweet and moving. I just really enjoyed this as a Sunday night film to while away the Sunday scaries before work on Monday.
Yeah, can't really argue. I think this is good fun. It's definitely very solidly entertaining in hitting, as you say, all the beats it wants to hit. I think the pop songs are actually good, which is crucial in your movie about music and pop bands. The characters are very likeable. It's got a very sort of smart sort of sense of fun. It changes the animation style up in a sort of Spider-Verse-y way sometimes. It's quite light. I don't know. There was a part of me that was expecting or hoping for something transcendently great like Spider-Verse or one of your better Pixar movies. I don't think it's quite there. I think it's merely just good fun. But I mean, it is extremely good fun. A lot of the stuff with the characters is very funny. The emotional beats, they're fairly straightforward, but they do land. You know, there's a nice message about, you know, being true to yourself and not feeling the need to hide your nature from your friends. Plus, you know, because it's about demon hunters, or often lots of awesome, somewhat sort of manga anime inspired fight scenes, often combined with the musical sequences, which are just, you know, flat out cool. Not sure it's doing anything universally defining, but it is a very good fun film. I'm sure the kids love it.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I feel about it, in that, like, it's not really, well, in terms of like storytelling or animation, it's not exactly breaking new grounds. I completely agree with you say that it feels like a post Spider-Verse film, in that, yeah, the way they play around with the animation, like the scenes in Hell feel like visually and stylistically very different to the scenes on Earth, and then there's quite a lot of interesting montages during the musical sequences, you know, that again have this element of fantasy and unreality, which is helped by the fact that they are literally doing spells and with their music and fighting demons. So all of that, you know, works really well. I mean, it's got a really interesting, unusual premise. I mean, there isn't any other film quite like it in terms of like what the story is about, but in terms of what it's doing, it's quite straightforward plot in that, you know, there's a sort of adventure plot. They're trying to complete a big spell. There's some evil demons. There's a plot line, which we can go into more details about, basically about a wedge being driven between the members of the Huntrix group. And yeah, it creates a very straightforward structure of there's a secret, the secret comes out, the groups are divided, the friendships are sort of cast asunder, everyone has like a sort of dark night of the soul and then a low moment, and then yeah, they come together to succeed in the end and vanquish evil. I don't think that's much of a spoiler when you realise this mainstream, in terms of its structure and appeal, film has a happy ending where the good guys win. That's not really much of a spoiler, but so in terms of storytelling, it's not exactly, like I say, breaking new ground, but everything it does well. You can't really like fault it. You know, it's one of those things I was watching, I kind of knew like, okay, I know where this is going. I can kind of see when this is going to be like the low point, when the characters are all like divided and then they come back together, etc. But even though knowing that's the beats it was going to hit, I was still like, well, I'm still enjoying this. I feel sad when the three friends fall out. I feel happy when they get together. You know, I laugh with them and things like that. So even so, I guess it's maybe formulaic, it's like a bit too harsh. It's supposed to be predictable or I guess I'd say mainstream, but it's good in that way.
Yeah, no, it's I guess it is on the formula for the most part, but I think it's doing a good job. I think the characters are likeable enough that, yeah, you always, as you say, want to spend time with them and want them to overcome the obstacles and the arguments or whatever. I think the structure of it is that the main character, the lead vocalist, Vumi, is kind of more to the fore than the other two. What is it, Mira and Zoe, who are a bit more sort of background colour jokes and, you know, a bit of sort of emotional support. But, you know, it's not that long a film, and I wouldn't necessarily want it to be like 2.5 hours long, so fair enough.
Well, she is clearly the main character, and the focus is on her. I don't know if we should spoil the kind of third way in twist or the kind of end of Act 1 complication.
We probably don't need to spoil too many of the twists, but yeah, she is definitely the main character. The other two are definitely secondary characters.
She has more of an emotional journey, and that her emotional journey is linked to the main conflict and the main action conflict, which is what you'd expect from a film like, I don't know, Spider-Man, any Spider-Man film, Black Panther, Iron Man, Superman. Films where one character, their name is the title, they're eponymous. You expect that character's emotional journey, them, you know, struggling with their a personal relationship or a personal conflict, self-doubt, trauma, fear, that sort of thing, loss. Those things, for those kind of characters, they say like Spider-Man in the Spider-Man film, are linked closely to Spider-Man defeating the villain and overcoming the physical obstacles. Now, this film's obviously about 3 singers in a band or group, but yeah, one of them is, as you say, the Rumi character is the main character. It's her emotional growth, relationship to the other characters that tie in with the big dramatic beats involving demon hunting and fighting. So yeah, that makes her very much the main character. Though I thought the 3 characters are drawn quite well. I mean, drawn as an animative as in like the kind of character they've created. They've got distinct personalities. There's an interesting dynamic in the group. They kind of all feel like believable people. No one's just a kind of person in the background or, there to like pad out the numbers. Each character has a dynamic. They have their own sort of smaller arcs. There's like enough difference in the characters between them that there's interesting banter and back and forth. So, like I say, it's efficient writing. Even the lesser developed characters have like enough to make you feel that to make you invest in them and relate to the group, as well as the fact that one is clearly the main character.
Well, yeah, like if anything, the fact they've got a bit less focus time than the main one means that they have to have, bigger, more distinct personalities to make sure they stand out in that limited space and can have these big sort of cartoon emotions that work and make them distinct.
Yes, they're also a bit more of a, comedy characters. All the characters are a bit silly and there's jokes about them, but they're, I guess, more characters that are played for laughs than the really serious, accepting yourself personal journey the main character goes on. I mean, this is an animation aimed at kids or the young at heart, whatever you want to say. Obviously I enjoyed it and I'm nearly 40 and I'm not the only adult who's enjoyed it, but it's got the sort of tone of a children's film, which includes things like zany animation, characters putting like silly faces and stuff, and kind of some very off the wall, almost like Looney Tunes style kind of comedy bits and things like that, especially in terms of like the demons they're fighting, which are usually like bizarre, interesting characters. So yeah, obviously all the characters have a kind of Looney Tunes-esque comedy element to them as well, but that is more apparent for the 2 supporting people. And also mainly for like the other, background characters, not only the demons, but like their manager, who's just a bit of a silly guy and things like that. They've got that kind of, archetypal supporting characters that you'll be familiar with, having seen in the Disney or Warner Brothers kind of children's animation.
Well, yeah, there's the cute animal mascots who turn up at one point.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And, as well as sort of general children's film stuff, there's some fun sort of specific music industry satire stuff. To be honest, there's probably jokes I would get more if I was, someone who knew anything about K-pop.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot that's going over my head here, but, I've, lived in a country that has a pop music long enough to be able to get, some basic jokes about things like boy bands, like, the different members of the Saja Boys all being these different sort of boy band archetypes, including the one who is just, abs and nothing else, just basically a vac of abs with a face.
Yeah. Again, we're all aware of those sort of stereotypes they're ripping on, especially after when I watched the Robbie Williams film earlier this year. And obviously we're familiar with the archetypes of pop music and the music industry. I mean, I don't know much, if anything, about K-pop. It was interesting that I found out how much it just seems to be built on the pop music of the last sort of 20 to 30 years, which is obviously the earlier part. That's what I grew up with. So yeah, archetypes of boy bands going back to Backstreet Boys and British ones as well, like Boyzone, take that. And also the influence of like American hip hop, how each group seems to have a rapper in them and has to have rap segments as well. It's just kind of basically a big sort of soup of like Western pop music that seems to be blended together, mashed in with sort of East Asian fan culture, and then kind of regurgitated in a sort of social media conscious, hyper attentive 21st century. I mean, it's interesting, I guess, a window into the world of K-pop. The songs are good though as well. They are very catchy.
Yeah, I think the K-pop, I don't know, again, I'm not an expert in K-pop either. It seems both somewhat similar to Western pop music, but both more heightened in some way and more sort of knowingly artificial, and also more sort of weirdly structured. Like, as you say, everything seems to be done in a certain way. You have these fan appearances or fan engagements, which are just a thing you do. And there's, like, academies and stuff that the idols all emerge from. And yeah, the film occasionally makes a few hints at, the dark side of K-pop, which I know is also a thing, but clearly isn't getting too far into it because, partly it's a film that's for children, or at least very much meant to be accessible for children. And also, I suspect real K-pop was very involved in the making of this movie, so they're unlikely to criticise it too brutally.
No, exactly, yeah. And, I guess they've probably got K-pop songwriters and producers to make the songs, which is why the songs do actually pass muster, songs in their own right that have gone viral and, yeah, as you say, charted in their own right. There must have been people involved. I looked up the performers. I didn't recognise any of the cast. They all seem to be actually mainly from acting backgrounds. I think in Korea, some of them have been in, I think especially the woman who voices Rumi, the main character, has been in more American things. They don't seem to be singers though in their own right, although they can sing very well. I mean, I guess like most people, they probably went to some form of stage school where they were taught to sing and dance and stuff, even if they've mainly done dramatic acting since. But they can certainly sing well, and they have like a good group chemistry, and it's all they're believable as pop stars. And this has very much like connected with like a wider audience. I mean, you know, a lot of, after seeing the film, a lot of things that I've seen on TikTok and Instagram are suddenly falling into place. Now I know like, oh yeah, that's what those people are cosplaying. And there are a lot of people cosplaying these characters, singing the songs, using them as track beds for Instagram and TikTok videos. And the other thing about it is that it's a direct-to-Netflix film, but it's actually now getting a cinema release, which Netflix only does its cinema releases for either the ones that are going to be huge hits or the ones that are aimed at Oscar recognition. This was obviously, aimed as a direct-to-Netflix film, but it's been so popular it's now getting a cinema run. So that goes to show this way this is kind of really has, I guess, gone viral and connected with an audience, despite the fact it wasn't, I don't think, supposed to be billed as kind of like one of the most attention-grabbing films of the year, but it has ended up being.
Yeah, I'm going to the big MCM convention in London in late October. Come and buy my comics, which is where you get a lot of like fan culture and cosplay and stuff, and I'd be very surprised if I don't see a lot of K-pop demon hunters when I'm there this October.
Yeah, at least you'll know now and you'll be able to recognise them. So whereas before there was quite a lot of people on my Instagram feed who cosplay like a whole range of anime characters. I didn't know them from anyone else from an anime that I've not read or watched, I suppose, their manga in terms of the reading. But as we discussed in the show, that I'm not a huge expert in this field and I'm working my way through the canon, Evangelion and all the rest. But now I guess, now I recognise these characters and stuff. And they do seem to be popular, and some people have done some amazing cosplays that really nail the characters.
It does seem like the sort of thing that is going to be huge in cosplay and probably franchise to hell. Like, I'm assuming the sequel is being fast-tracked.
I guess so. I mean, it's been a big hit, and it's obviously the sort of thing that they can do sequels for. Another Adventures from the Huntrix.
Well, yeah, spoilers, they don't all die at the end.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it has a happy ending. It's a children's summer blockbuster, despite the fact it wasn't going to be in the cinema, but it is now. But yeah, they can definitely make more of this. But I'd be up for watching more of it. If it's just as good, it's just as funny. The songs are just as catchy. They've done the plot line of a rival band, so I guess I'm interested to see what plot they choose next. I guess some other form of rival band or something like that. Something else could happen. There's more potential to this world. It's not a hugely complicated world, but there's certainly potential for a sequel here.
Well, they've left the world building quite open, so I'm sure they can just throw something else in. And yeah, plus I'm sure someone who knows more about K-pop could probably come up with the next logical problem for a K-pop band to face. So yeah, I'm sure there's more. Okay, and last up today, it's more animation. This is Eyes of Wakanda, another show from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, this time an anthology series exploring a bit more of the history of, Wakanda, the fictional African country that we discovered in the Black Panther movies. And this time the focus is on the Hattusilims, or the Dogs of War, an elite force of Wakandan warriors throughout history who have been trying to recover the precious vibranium from other countries who have it, sometimes going on massive undercover missions to do so, and doing whatever is necessary to get that vibranium back. So yep, we've seen all 4 episodes set across different periods of history. Alistair, what did you think of them?
So this was a good adventure show. It was entertaining when I watched it. There's something about it that made it feel a bit insubstantial to me. I think it might be due to the fact it was only 4 episodes. Generally, actually, maybe I'd have preferred it had there been more. I guess it's an anthology show, but it's also a short anthology show, 4 20-minute or to half an hour episodes. Format doesn't give much opportunity for either a range of stories or for detailed character development. There's not really much of an arc plot. There isn't really one main character. The stories are also separated sometimes by centuries or even one point like 2 millennia, which means there's almost no character continuity. And without kind of having this whole big range, if they did 8 or 10, you'd have seen a whole range of history and got this broader perspective. Whereas this made me feel very much that I've seen a bit of something, just a few adventures that were a little bit samey because there wasn't enough variety to dig into what's detailed, but not enough of a arc plot to get invested in this story that's unfolding in 4 chunks. So not a disaster, not difficult or just annoying to watch, but I don't know, it felt kind of like a cheap chocolate bar. You enjoy it when you eat it and then kind of feel that was a bit unsubstantial and doesn't leave much of an impression afterwards.
Yeah, I thought this was decent. I thought this was alright. I thought the middle 2 especially were basically quite enjoyable as little stories go. The ones at the beginning and end were not as good, but still fine. I think, I don't know, it does have the slight feel, and I've said this before about certain Marvel projects. I think I may have said it about most, if not all, of the What If we covered. But it just feels a bit bonus content-y. I guess if you liked Wakanda, which, if you liked the world of Wakanda, which I did, having enjoyed those 2 Black Panther films, I wanted a bit more of it. Here it is, and it's quite nice, but it mostly just leaves me wanting more, interesting Wakanda content. Maybe this would have felt like more of an interesting part of a whole if it had come out at the same time as the second Black Panther movie, or if they've held it till they make the third one, should they ever achieve that. But as it is, it was just a bit, fine. I didn't hate that. It had Christopher Priest credited at the end under the special thanks, which I always enjoy. But yeah, didn't blow me away.
I guess that's for his creation of the Domo Miraji, which I can never pronounce right.
He created both the Dora Milaje and the Hattuts Avaze, so yeah, he's responsible for a few of the concepts here.
Yeah. He's a good writer. It does very much feel like bonus content. I feel bad because obviously both What If and this show are animated, and I don't like that idea of being like, oh, the animated stuff is second tier, because animation is just as valid as any other art form, and there's an enormous amount of work and talent that goes into good animation. And I know people who make animations or are just fans of animations do get annoyed at people very much feel that it's second place to live action, and it is a little bit unfair and a bit of a stereotype. That said, this does feel like bonus Marvel content that's not quite as important as Ironheart or even other TV shows that are direct to Disney Plus streaming. Obviously, they're lower profile than the films, but it does feel like a bit of like another Marvel thing, not like something they're really kind of like, watch this is essential. It's a big deal, like they did with Ironheart, for example.
I mean, I don't think we've, universally dismissed the animation as being secondary, have we? We said plenty of nice things about X-Men 97 and Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man earlier this year.
No, that is very true. And yeah, I wasn't supposed to talk about us in particular, but I just know it is a thing in society that, animation is just seen, again, it's seen as something for kids, which is also in essence devalued compared to other things. But it feels just bad to say, well, this is like not as important as other Marvel content. And it's not because it's animated, it's because it's not as important as other Marvel content, because it just has this kind of secondary feel to it.
Well, yeah, and as you say, part of that is the anthology feel, like unavoidably doing these scattered stories just means you feel like you have a bit less to hold on to. I mean, it's interesting from a world-building perspective, but I don't know. I don't think they quite gave it enough of a sense of the whole, even if they did try and do a bit of an ending that looked back and took in all the other stories in the final episode. I think it felt a bit token, to be honest. But having said that, they were mostly executed fine. The animation is pretty slick. There's some good action scenes in most of them. And I like that they do somewhat engage with the moral ambiguity of, yes, we're fundamentally on Wakanda's side because, the Black Panther is cool. But are they sometimes, being a bit too brutal in their bids to get this vibranium back?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a sort of a degree of moral ambiguity to it. There's some moral complexity to it. There's also some bits of violence. There's actually bits of like blood when people get stabbed. So yeah, I don't know if this is aimed more at teenagers or less at children, but it's definitely a bit more real than, I don't know, K-pop Demon Hunters, for example, for want of a better phrase. But I thought each like story was kind of good in themselves. They're kind of a good sort of almost like completely standalone sort of short film. So yeah, they might have actually had more of an impact had they come out spaced out over a different period of time, because they feel very separate. I mean, each one's set in a different location and period in history. I quite liked how they weave together different historical periods. It's interesting that there was almost none of them are Britain or America or really Western European based. First one's, I think, set in Africa. There's one set during the Trojan Wars. There's one set in China. There's one set during the Italian invasion of Abyssinia in the late 19th century. So these are not actually like huge, really popular, well-known bits of history, the kind of the obvious ones to go for, and they're not Western focused. The only like Westerners to really appear are the Italians, who are very much like background colonial villains basically in the final episode. It is interesting how he weaves bits of history together and different cultures and different things. That aspect of it I thought was pretty good, and the animation kind of reflected that as well.
Well, yeah, and I think it's maybe seen as a bit part of the Black Panther Wakanda brief to try and, bring in cultures other than the white English-speaking Western ones.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. This is very much part of what you want from your Wakanda story, which they delivered. So yeah, they're really thinking this through and coming up with like different ideas, and also that like link back to Black Panther and the essence of what you want from a Black Panther story. This emphasis on like a world that's kind of outside the West and kind of beyond colonialism and beyond the Western mindset, but is still like kind of an action superhero type thing, which I thought they did a good job of.
Yeah, and from a comic fan perspective, I quite enjoyed seeing a new Iron Fist in the third one, who had a slightly more comics accurate costume and, got to be cool.
Yeah. That was one that was in 16th century China.
Yeah.
It was nice. There was a good twist, well, at least it was a twist from my perspective, to bring in Iron Fist, who so far has only appeared in Netflix shows for Marvel, not actually in the Disney Plus content. So yeah, that was a good twist to bring in that other character. And also, yeah, even the score a bit, it made it a little bit less like Wakanda are just these awesome guys who kick everyone's ass when there's another superhero who can hold a candle to them. So yeah, I did enjoy that episode. I thought that was a good adventure story.
Yeah, no, that was fun. A good choice, I think, to give Iron Fist, or at least an Iron Fist, a bit of a shot at redemption.
Yeah,
Who knows when we'll see him again.
Yeah, I really liked the Iliad one. I'm a bit of an Iliad nerd. It's a story that I've read a lot about and kind of know quite well. I'm interested in all the different ways it's been adapted into different stories, such as, from Troy, the Brad Pitt film, through to sort of novelizations such as Dan Stevens' Ilium. Don't read that, it's a terrible book. Through to Ada Palmer's Perhaps the Stars. Do read that, it's a brilliant book. So yeah, I did really like how they got all the different elements of, or lots of little elements of the Iliad story, which is a long and sprawling story. They kind of got some of the core elements in, including some details that probably weren't needed, but that were there to kind of, making sure they did know the source material, such as Achilles' soldiers being the Myrmidons, and he's the king of the Myrmidons, that being referred to, making Achilles the main character, having his legendary sprinting in there as well, the appearance of Odysseus as well, wily Odysseus, and a few other characters were mentioned, such as Prion and stuff. It's set during the specific bit of the Iliad after Achilles has finished his sulking and killed Hector. So yeah, I just thought it was, again, as a bit of an Iliad nerd, I quite like the fact that they actually got most of those details in. Was it a little strange that they went that far back into history? I did want to say is that, has Wakanda existed in its current form since the late Bronze Age? In which case it's nearly 3,000 years old. No, over 3,000 years old. And still had kind of advanced technology that far back. I find this difficult to believe, but it's Marvel. I'm willing to let them pass. But that did stretch the believability a little bit. That said, I'm glad they did a story that I know quite well and weave that in, so I'm willing to give them this one.
Yeah, I'm not a hardcore Iliad student, although I do obviously know the Trojan horse story. So I was unsurprised but excited when they got inside that horse. Yeah. Yeah. I think the one thing I did, I don't know if bump on is the right word, but the one thing I did occasionally find myself thinking about was, kind of as you said, the interesting way that apparently Wakanda has existed, and not just, being high tech, but had, 21st century looking tech, and often 21st century looking personal styling, in terms of beards and stuff. Yeah, thousands of years in the past. Obviously, it's part of how Wakanda is presented, but occasionally it was a bit it does make them look less like a centuries old advanced civilization and more like time travelers sometimes.
Yeah, there is that element of it, yeah. Yeah, also kind of they don't seem to change. Everything's just kind of eternal and very structured. I mean, there are some civilizations that have changed very, very little over long periods of time. Ancient Egypt had more than 3,000 years of stability with very little change culturally. And I guess the whole thing about Wakanda is they isolate themselves from the rest of the world, which again maybe leads to things not changing very much. I mean, I don't know how much we're supposed to really dig into what Wakanda is like as a place and how it works politically, socially, things like that. Because a lot of these things, the more you dig into it, the less of a sense it makes. It probably makes more sense in the comics, where there's bigger scope for storytelling and development.
I don't know, maybe we're not, but they have just made a TV show about it, so they have kind of invited these thoughts.
Yeah, so that was the other thing I was going to say, is that this is a show that's supposed to be more this is the show actually about Wakanda. Because also the thing about the Black Panther films, and I assume this is at least partly true in the comics, obviously Nick, you can correct me, is it's about Wakandan characters, specifically Black Panther, going out into the wider world and interacting with people outside Wakanda, things like that, which this is more you get to actually see more inside Wakanda itself. And yeah, you don't get a really detailed look inside it.
It depends, to be honest. It depends who's writing it. I think increasingly as time has gone on, especially in the last 10 years or so, especially since the film came out or just before, I think there has been more focus on stories set inside Wakanda rather than just the Black Panther goes to America. I guess on the hope that audiences can now stand to look at more than one African character in a comic. But there was certainly a long period where Black Panther comics were mostly about Black Panther goes to America and meets the more famous superheroes. Yeah,
it was interesting, yeah. Well, I suppose there is also the element of the characters going out in this show as well. But Yeah, I would have preferred more thought about what Wakanda's like as a place and how it's developed, because I feel what I see doesn't really pass the sniff test as someone who knows about history and politics. Because 3,000 years of stability with that level of technology seems a little bit unbelievable. I mean, you don't need that to think about this to enjoy the show. It's just the sort of thing I think about, but I think it's worth talking about because they're trying to create a sense of this place as like a believable world and with history. And actually, this show specifically digging into the history, which is, rather than digging into the present, which is what the films are about.
Yeah, no, and if these 4 episodes took place over a short span of time, it would be fine. But the fact that there's like hundreds, if not thousands of years between some of them does make you ask these questions.
Yeah, there's 2,000 years between the Iliad one and the Chinese one. Yeah, and then there's several centuries from that to the final episode. Yeah, and which is why I also returned by saying I would have preferred more stories covering either more periods in history so you can see how things change over time. If they did 8 or 10, you could have this thing when we're like Wakanda's the character and the journey you're going on is how Wakanda changes. Are there events that lead to Wakanda being more open for a period and then events where that backfires and they become more closed? Where does this belief in the isolation come from? Has it been tested? Do things change? Because even very stable cultures go through these big periods of change. Yeah, that's the sort of thing that I thought worked better in an anthology format, going across the centuries, and also giving you more scope for a more in-depth story you could get more invested in across, say 8 to 10 episodes. Something similar in length to that Spider-Man show we reviewed before, as opposed to this, which is much shorter.
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe that's kind of what it's missing, yeah, a bigger sense of purpose or sense that we're really going on a journey or discovering something about Wakanda. Because, yeah, apart from maybe a bit of toying with the idea of, are Wakanda right to kill this many people to get back their metal, it doesn't really play that much with bigger ideas. It's just, 4 little action adventures set in and around, well, mostly outside Wakanda involving Wakandan characters. And, yeah, as I say, as we've said now a few times, they're fine. But yeah, they're not really reaching for anything much higher.
Yeah. But it's enjoyable on that basis. So yeah, if you're looking for something to watch, it's not disappointing. Again, definitely watch much worse things this year. As I said, yeah, just feels a bit insubstantial. There could have been more meaty, something to chew on a bit more. That's all we have time for this episode. If you have enjoyed this episode of Moderate Fantasy Violence, then please subscribe in your podcatcher of choice. While you're there, please leave us a nice review. You can also visit our website, moderatefantasyviolence.com, to find other episodes of the podcast, bonus audio clips, and written pieces by Nick and myself.
And if you've really enjoyed it, you can also follow us on social media. We are on Facebook and Blue Sky. Join us now and hear exciting updates about if and when we're podcasting. And you can also follow me. I too am on mostly Instagram and Blue Sky at the moment, both under nickbryan.com, although on Blue Sky it's a dot and on Instagram it's the word dot. And there's also a website, and that obviously it's a dot, where you can hear about my self-published comic, including my next comic, Worrywart. I will probably put a link to the pre-launch page so you can pre-register and be ready as soon as it launches to get the early bird discounts in the first 24 hours. I know that I've said the word discount, this really feels like advertising, but hey, I've provided you with all this amazing free content without mentioning my comics too much. So yes, buy Worrywart. It's a fun action, cartoon, violence, fantasy story, and it'll be good.
I urge you all to go out and get your Worrywarts, because I've read a lot of Nick's comics and they're very good. So yeah, go forth and support Nick's Comics Empire. And then after you've done that, you can get more from me by searching for Alistair Ball on TikTok, Instagram or Blue Sky. You can also find more of my writing at redtrainblog.com or find my theatre reviews at everythingtheatre.com. You can also get more from us in our next episode, where we will be returning from the dead to commit murders in Dexter Resurrection, starring Michael C. Hall, and then grappling with planet-destroying power in the second arc of The Power Fantasy from Kieran Gillen and Caspar Wingard. We enjoyed the first arc of this comic when we read it earlier in the year. What will we feel about the second arc? Join us in 2 weeks to find out. Until then, goodbye.
Bye.